business.
Air Jordans.
Yep, Yeezys too. Easy. Just jumped over Jumpman. That's funny to me though, and it's real because I resonate with. I was just talking to someone yesterday. My friend Jay Johnson from North Carolina visited. He's a future Olympian. He's training for the Olympics, and he's talking about like, Ruquan, why don't you have more rich white friends? Like, that's the whole point of coming here, is to network with rich white people. And I said, I go into like defense mode and I'm like playing basketball defense, like squatting real low, my arms are wide, and I'm like defending myself to say, I resonate not with rich white kids. I resonate.
Right, you could say, have you ever met
I resonate with poor people, man. Like, I love poor people. I love people who or either poor people or people who understand the plight of the poor, because I was put here to do something. Like, I have a mission, and it is to serve poor people. And so I'm not interested in just like manipulating a rich white kid to like help, like allow me to sit and talk to his dad, to dance for his dad so that I can maybe get a donation from my organization. I'm interested in understanding the plight the poor people have experienced by reading the scholars, by talking to the people in these communities who too are scholars. And so, though, as we think about reparations, there's no way, in my opinion, that we're going to discuss reparations, not just in this class, but worldwide, without talking about God. Especially if we're talking about reparations for poor black people, because for poor black people, in all of eternity, God has been a part of their story.
Yes, exactly.
Who the God is, or what the God looks like, or how the God is shaped, or what particular text we're reading about that God in, it can change throughout the times. But nonetheless, for poor black people, God has always been a part of that story, and reparations have also always been a part of the spiritual story for poor black people. And so I'm happy that we're having these conversations about reparations, because Harvard committing $100 million to reparations essentially through the Harvard and Legacy of Slavery initiative is a faithful move. It should be yes, it should be more and all of that, but it's a faithful move in the right direction. We will not effectively, as I listen to my classmates talk about their jadedness and their sadness and their disconnect from faith as it pertains to faith in humanity, I can relate. And some of that is colored by the spiritual expertise that my great-grandmother, who was born on a plantation, endowed into our family to say, yes. And even Du Bois said, the freedom that you want in America will not happen. That's what Du Bois articulated to Hampton students and faculty. And it's like, we haven't listened to that for whatever reasons. We're still in this like strive for it to happen. And I think that my sort of request is that we would listen to my great-grandmother perhaps and think about, because what I've also found, this is based on my research, is that black people in the academic experience, some of them, not all, some of them have become in opposition to any idea of like waiting on God to deliver a promise. There's become like a disdain for like waiting on the Lord. Our ancestors waited and didn't do anything, which is not true, but still I understand that perspective. But my call is for us to wait on the Lord still. While we put our feet on the ground, Frederick Douglass said, I prayed for God to free me from slavery, but it wasn't until I prayed with my feet that I became free.
Prayed with your feet. That's an interesting image.
So yes, we should like actually build the fund. The guy you named, who's in Kenya, who's building tech and essentially revolutionizing the sport of finance.
Yeah, it's really interesting there.
We should do that, but also maybe there's a way that we wait on God. And I want to hear, how do we wait on God? What is your vision about that?
What are your suggestions? I'm not very religious.
Well, I'm not religious either. I don't think religion is a qualification to suggest spiritual ideas, but my ideas are that we would, the same way we read Baldwin as a sacred text, we would read the scriptures as sacred texts. And we would reason for ourselves. Like, we're geniuses. We don't need like even a pastor to come and mediate. We need to just look at the scripture and then pair it with historical data and then start to reason and start to discuss and start to understand. And I don't think that we must be at seminary to do that, because it makes this argument that like, oh, the spiritual people are over there and then there's the rest of us.
Right.
My argument is that the conversation about God has to be, only because it is a part of human history. To come and study Baldwin or any of these scholars that we're reading without talking about the God that they worshipped is maybe foolish. So my suggestion is for us to just read it together. Not necessarily in this class, but I mean at scale. Why don't we read it together? You know, maybe we do this thing like on Twitter. Somebody read the Bible and then we screenshot it and then we like critique this particular part of the Bible. But there aren't courses, as much as should be, this is my theory, having these conversations and pairing it with historical data and then bringing in the scholars who know the information and then discussing the plights and things like that and taking it to that level, you know?
I want you to get to meet Marla Fredericks, who is now the new dean of the Divinity School.
Yep.
She's an African-American woman. She was here on the faculty. She went to Atlanta for a while. Now she's come back as dean of the School of Divinity. She would love to meet with you and talk with you about that. In my own experience, I have a profound distrust of Christianity, partly because